Hi everybody, so we're going to spend just a little bit of time factoring some trinomials. So the I can factor trinomials when a equals 1. And some of you might be like, well, why is this a equals 1 here? Well, basically if you look in front of all of the x's, you could put a 1 there. And so that ultimately means when we factor it down and put our trinomials out, well, 1x times 1x gives you 1x squared. So that's where the a equals 1 comes from. And on a different day, we're going to do when a is bigger than 1 or just not 1. So basic process. Every time I look at a problem like this, when a equals 1, what basically happens is I try to multiply to get this number. And so that's a times sign. And I add to get this number. And that works when a equals 1 because we're just multiplying by 1. So what I'm going to do is find all of the numbers that multiply to 15. Now you might already know the answer, but just work with me. 15, I know I can do 1 times 15, 2, 3, and 3 times 5. So then I look at this pair and I say, okay, what multiplies to positive 15 and adds to positive 8? Well, that is plus 3. And plus 5. The reason why that works is because when I multiply back together, when I multiply a binomial times a binomial, x times x gives me x squared, and x times 5 gives me 5x. I always put the number in front. And then 3 times x gives me 3x, and 3 times 5 gives me 15. Well, when I put these back together, 5x plus 3x, that gets me back to where I started. So my solution is x plus 3 times x plus 5. But you can always check it by multiplying your binomial times binomial to see if it gets you back where you started. And the answer in this case is yes. Okay, so let's look at this next one. It says x squared minus 9x plus 20. So I have to multiply something that gives me positive 20. But when I add it together, it gives me negative 9. So that does a little something. Think about that for a second. But let's find the factors of 20. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. If you ever get stuck, I find it super helpful to list the factors. So I've got to figure out which of those things, when I multiply to 20, gives me 9. Well, it's 4 and 5. So x times x gives me that x squared. And so now I know it's going to be 4 and 5. However, do you notice when you add them together, it gives you negative 9? So your brain needs to say, okay, something needs to happen with the signs. How do I get a positive? Either a positive times a positive when you're multiplying, or a negative times a negative. So basically, if it's a plus at the end, you know it's going to be the same sign, and then this right here is your indicator of what your sign is going to be. So minus 4, minus 5. So a lot of you found that pattern on your own, but I'm just detailing it out so you can see it. So we've got two problems here, but there's a slight difference. Do you see what the difference is? These multiply to give you a negative at the end. Well, how do you multiply to get a negative? You know your signs have to be, or at least hopefully you know, your signs have to be opposite. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. So let's go through and figure out what multiplies to negative 18 but adds to give me positive 3. So I know 1 and 18, that doesn't do it. 2 and 9, that doesn't do it. 3 and 6, does that do it? Yes. I know that if the signs are different, 3 and 6 make 3 when I'm adding them. So let's figure that out. X and x, because x times x gives you the x squared. Now, I know 3 and 6, it does not matter which order you put them in, but it does matter which one gets the plus and which one gets the minus. So if I'm going to do 3 and 6 and add them together, one being negative, the positives, do you see how the positives win? So that means the 6 has to be the positive, and the 3 would be the negative. So if I multiply that back together, I get negative 3x in the middle and positive 6x. Does that give me positive 3x? Yes. So therefore, I know that this is my solution. All right, I'm going to move the screen down. There are 3 more. I would like you to try those 3 more on your own. Push pause and then come back in a minute to see how it went. All right, I put the skeletons to all the answers out, but I haven't put in signs yet. So if I look at this one right here, they multiply to give me -7 and then add to give me -6. Well, if they multiply to give me -7, the signs have to be different. And when they add together, they give me the negative. So therefore, which one has to be minus? The 7. So be really careful on these. Oftentimes, what I notice is students come up with the right numbers. They put the signs in the wrong place. That means this has to be positive. So I get positive 1x, negative 7x. That's what gets me to my negative 6x in the middle. So here's my solution. This one, here's my solution. It's going to be 1 and 5. They multiply to, oh, is this going to work? So if they add to give me positive 6. Can I do this one? Man, I can't even do that one, because if I went minus, that would add to give me a -6. Hey, there was a mistake on that one. So this one, you can't do that. As of this time, we can't solve that. I am going to show you how to solve that later, but right now, it doesn't work. And sometimes you just say, darn it, that one doesn't even work. Then, let's see, this one. A minus times a minus gives you positive 25. Good. Now, you might notice sometimes they don't write it like that. Do you see how it's x minus 5 and x minus 5? So I could actually write x minus 5 squared. All right, I just want to go back and think about this one for a second. -5, you can't get that right now. So if you got messed up with that one, that's all right. Sometimes you just say, I can't do that yet. I am going to show you how to find a solution for that at some point in time. But right now, it can't factor.